So it's hard for me to stand here in a turquoise jacket and pretend that I knew nothing about the rebranding of Software AG, but I knew nothing. So thank you, Eric. I'm glad I didn't choose red. So today, every single company is a technology company. Evolving faster than ever, technology is being infused into every single facet of society, making it impossible to separate business and technology strategy. So as business and technology are fusing, emerging trends are changing what we all know of as business as usual. On the business front, globalization. So new markets and new customers are emerging as billions are rising out of poverty. Secondly, barriers to entry are being lowered as entrepreneurs with very, very low capital needs are challenging entrenched players. And thirdly, and we've heard some about this already this morning, business ecosystems, rich business ecosystems are being formed as organizations are transcending traditional industry silos. So to help make sense of it all, I'm here today on behalf of Deloitte Consulting to share with you our sixth annual Technology Trends Report. And the title of this year's report is The Fusion of Business and Technology. And this has been inspired by the changing role, the transformation of how the C-suite and the CIO collaborate in order to leverage disruptive change, in order to chart strategy, and most importantly, to pursue potentially transformative opportunities. So the Trends Report is a combination of primary and secondary research from working with client executives across many industries, working with academic luminary, working with analysts, and obviously, in the digital age, crowdsourcing from our global network of practitioners. I'm going to take you through 8 trends, starting with the CIO as the Chief Integration Officer, all the way through to the IT worker of the future. And as I'm talking to you about the trends, obviously I'm going to go into some of them in a little bit more detail than others, just so I can keep to my allocated time. But I'm going to be explaining why they matter through examples, giving you a few ideas on how to get started. And then when I close, I'm going to talk to you about exponentials, which are evolving faster than Moore's law. And although they're founded in material and medical science, they have far-reaching technology implications. Underlying every single one of these trends is cybersecurity, and I'll touch on that as we go through them. So starting with the CIO, if there's anybody in an organization that has the broadest view of technology, it should be the CIO. And they are very well positioned to facilitate this fusion of business and technology and evolve their role into the Chief Integration Officer, moving from a technology wrangler to a strategist. The CIO has the opportunity to be the connective tissue, not just between business and technology, but the realities of today and the potential of tomorrow. There is no doubt that the value of IT is at the highest it's ever been. If you look at the ability to generate revenue and to create operational efficiencies. As a result, the CIO should be positioning himself in order to identify and to vet and to apply technology trends to the business roadmap. As new roles are emerging within the technology landscape, Chief Digital Officer, Chief Data Officer, Chief Innovation Officer, the CIO has got to be the integrator that brings all of those roles together into a very clear strategy, because underlying every single one of those roles is technology. And if those roles don't exist today within the organization, it's incredibly important that the CIO steps forward and brings all of those activities within his or her strategy. So how do you get started? And I think the fundamental thing that a CIO needs to be focused on right now is operational excellence. Because if the shop is not well run, you're not going to be invited in to be working with the business, simply put. Secondly, it's incredibly important to be very well versed in science and technology trends and to launch and fund an innovation agenda. We've already heard about APIs, some great stories from the innovation winners this morning. The APIs have been around for as long as we've had systems. There's been a need for these systems to talk to each other, to exchange data. And what enables that communication is application programming interfaces, or APIs. Now, API economy is talking about how that is monetized, so taking different assets and exposing them to customers, to consumers, to partners in order to generate value. Originally, APIs were a very tactical asset. They were something kind of hidden within the walls of a project, maybe even owned by a single person. But as technology has been evolving, APIs have become the heart of a business strategy. There's tons of examples, and I think one of the easiest ones to get your head around is Netflix. And in 2008, when they opened their APIs, they were trying to attract new audiences. And what happened in a very short amount of time, the investment in APIs from different partners had created the ability to stream services to over 1,000 devices. Now, can you imagine how long it would have taken one company to do that? Where Netflix sits today, in any given day, there are 5 billion private API calls and 2 million public. So what started, as I said, was just quite simply a way to reach more audiences, has become their business strategy. 99.97% of the API activity is streaming to devices. So how do you get started if you haven't already embarked upon an API journey? I know we've spoken a lot about it's not all about the product, but you do have to think about the API as a product. It needs to have a very clear agenda, and it needs to have a very clear audience. Secondly, you've got to be thinking about security. As you're opening up APIs, obviously exposing different parts of your own ecosystem, it's a very, very important part of the API journey. So ambient computing, we heard mention of the Internet of Things. So ambient computing is what brings all of those devices and sensors. It's what puts the Internet of Things to work. Right now, it's estimated that there are 11 billion devices that have got sensors on them. 11 billion. So they're not networked. They're not even connected to the internet. So what ambient computing is all about is trying to figure out what it is that should be connected. The goal is not the internet of everything. The goal is the internet of some things that are very deliberately chosen and then purposefully deployed. I mean, my favorite example when it comes to ambient computing, and this probably comes from living in Seattle where parking is at a premium, is a company called Streetline, which is a Bay Area company, another place that has some interesting parking challenges. And what Streetline has done is literally from the ground up solved the problem of how do you find a parking spot. Starting with the sensor layers, which are laid on the ground, they can identify if there is a vehicle or something in the space, the parking space. Secondly, there's the middleware layer, and what that's doing is analyzing the information, looking historically, looking at current information, and then with a layer of intelligence, trying to weed out false positives. Did somebody put a trash can there? Did a car pull in and then pull out? And then the third layer is the application that then broadcasts all of this information. So as a consumer, as a driver, you're able to see on visible parking spots where they are located. You're able to feed your meter remotely. The parking enforcement officers are able to identify where someone is occupying a space longer than intended. When it comes to ambient computing, it's very important to get started, to think about the business outcome. That's where you need to be starting. And secondly, as you're going on this journey, visualize it from the view of the end user. Think about this as the end-to-end human interaction in terms of the design of ambient computing. Dimensional marketing. There was a time when marketing was really simple. It was one way, mass marketing from a company out to an individual. Marketing had the 4 Ps, product, price, placement, and promotion. But the digital world has totally flipped what marketing is today. Instead of being mass from inside a company to out to an individual, marketing is now being flipped around, and the individual is actually marketing back to the company, indicating what it is, what messages, what they want from the company. What that is adding in terms of layers of complexity is going from a very linear process to a much more circular marketing process, bringing in the idea of connectivity, of engagement, of data, and of technology. And the CIO is very, very well positioned in terms of marketing to support the endeavors of an organization. If you think about the technology that it's going to take. So this revolution in terms of marketing is going to be a little bit different from what we had. We're all used to the finance and the supply chain and the HR automations that have happened over the last 10, 20 years. But what's unique about the marketing, dimensional marketing, and all of the initiatives that are going to spring up to support marketing is that it's going to layer in digital and analytics as the web is going to become the battleground of marketing. So very, very different. The great example when you think about the world of dimensional marketing is an Australian telecommunications company called Telstra. Now in 2010, they'd just gone through privatization. They started to see declining numbers as fixed landlines. People were starting to use those a lot less. Plus, with the digital revolution again, a huge influx of brand new competitors. And that forced them to pause and think about, from a marketing perspective, what is it that our customer actually wants? And what they identified, as most of the folks who use mobile devices, there was a huge interest in data. How much data am I using? I want to make sure when we get to the end of the month that I haven't exceeded the data allocation. And what they did in terms of leveraging the dimensional marketing is paid attention to when data was starting to get used to interact with the customer, focused not just on marketing, but taking this as an opportunity to sell and to provide service. And they included offers for data packages. So the opportunity that lies out there within dimensional marketing is to focus upon, number one, be customer-led. Make sure that you understand what it is your customer wants to hear, not what you would like to tell them. Number two, data, data, data. How do you capture it? How do you collate it? How do you capitalize on it? And number three, obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you when I talk about data, it's got to be fair and limited use, and obviously cybersecurity comes in whenever you're collecting and leveraging client data. Software-defined everything. This is taking the IT process layer and automating it. Now, for most people in the room, you've probably already taken care of the server side of software-defined everything. But there's still opportunity within storage and within network. And you might say to yourself, why? Well, there's the average return on investment in terms of software-defined data centers is the ability to pull out 20% of the costs. But it's more than just a cost play. There's a speed factor as well. What the industry is telling us is that within the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have to deliver at 4 times the speed that we do today. Now, I don't know about you, but that's an awful long way for us all to go. So in order to help get there, software-defined everything is a play for many CIOs. A factor within that, sorry, could you go back one? I apologize. A factor within software-defined everything is often trying to get one of these initiatives funded. And it's interesting to note that there are players in the industry right now that are willing to finance a software-defined data center, and then based on that 20% return on investment to recoup the costs of the initiative down the line. Moving on to core renaissance. If you look at the costs that go into running any IT shop, 80% of the costs go into managing the core. Now, with that statistic, it's not surprising that 74% of all of the software decision makers in an organization are regarding core renaissance as either a critical or a high priority initiative. So in order to have a look at what should you be doing in the core, I think it's important to ask, what impact could your core applications have on achieving your business strategy? Or more importantly, flip the question around and say, in what way could your core applications hinder the delivery of your business strategy? Very similar to software-defined everything. It's a little bit difficult to get some of these initiatives funded. So like the Bureau of Engraving, it's recommended in their particular project to try and attach the core Renaissance activities to some other underlying business initiative. In their example, they replaced 23 systems off the platform, the burning platform of the need to add diagnostics, intelligence, and security to their operations. Amplified intelligence, so a little bit different to artificial intelligence. Amplified intelligence is not about replacing the human being. Instead, it's about augmenting the human being to support decision making. Now, CIOs, you might be saying, well, why would I be interested in this? It all comes down to an efficiency play. And a really good example is an oil rig worker who might be out in the North Sea somewhere, quite different than Vegas. And when they're dealing with repairs, the way that many of these operations are run, they need to get off the oil rig, go down, do a whole bunch of research. But what Amplified Intelligence offers to you is, in that particular example, is wearing smart glasses where there is ability to access all of the online information to do diagnostics as part of that repairs. That obviously is not only going to lead to greater efficiencies, but potentially safety as well in terms of certain industries. IT worker of the future. By 2020, retiring baby boomers are going to leave 31 million positions open. By 2025, 75% of the positions of the workers are going to be held by millennials, and that's people that were born after 1983. Right now in technology, only 30% of the positions are held by women. That's leaving the Bureau of Statistics, as you start to look at some of these numbers, to forecast that by 2020, there'll be 1 million programmer jobs, 1 million, not too far away, that have not been filled. But it's not just scarcity that makes the IT worker of the future a very important trend to pay attention to. It's also how the nature of the worker is changing. As every one of these emerging trends enters into our workforce, there comes a need for more education. But it's becoming more and more difficult to use traditional education platforms to keep up with this pace of change. Innovation is becoming a huge factor for workers. In a recent survey in India and China of millennials, as they were trying to search out where they were going to seek employment, 90% of them said that the number one factor for them was innovation. The other factor that's really at the heart of the IT worker of the future is design. And from a design perspective, if you think about it, it's a whole new layer of skills. We've often looked at science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM. If you're not from the US, I didn't know what STEM was when I first came here, but science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The whole concept of where our digital world is going is the need to bring in artistry. So the change from STEM and to bring in artists, science, technology, engineering, fine artists, and mathematics. And if you imagine, that means hiring graphical specialists, user experience experts, behavioral psychologists, all of this evolving the IT worker of the future. How to get started on this? Number one, focus on putting role models in leadership positions. Number two, you're going to have to recruit differently. And number three, embrace the virtual worker, as the nature of what an employee means to us today is changing. So as I'm closing out here, I wanted to talk just briefly about a couple of the exponentials. The first one is artificial intelligence. I'm going to just give you a couple of snapshots that hopefully will make you come by the booth later. We can share the book with you and talk more with you about these trends. I think what I love most about artificial intelligence is the ability to start to delegate work to your computer. Wouldn't payback be fun, the amount of work that those laptops give us? Secondly, robotics. Now, if you look at companies like Amazon, where their 18 million square foot warehouse is being run by robotics that are packing, picking, and shipping. But what's interesting about robotics is it's also leading to an increase in employment. The Bureau of Robotics is expecting an additional 2 million positions to be added by 2020 in order to support the industry. Additive manufacturing is still continuing to be a very strong exponential. Companies like GE and Boeing have been focusing on taking advantage of the more durable products that are using less materials and also faster production times. Quantum computing, and I think this one is going to be the most interesting to me. What quantum computing is doing is escaping from binary operations, the zeros and ones which we use when we code. And instead, the vision is to code in quantum bits or qubits. So taking a page out of quantum physics, the fact that particles can exist in multiple forms all at the same time. And what this gives to us in terms of implications for the future of technology is going to be speed of processing. While that sounds very exciting, it has some very interesting implications. Our current cryptology would take us beyond all the lifetimes of the people in this room to crack. If quantum computing becomes a reality, and it's not a reality today, although there are companies like D-Wave working on this in Vancouver, Canada, our current cryptology would be cracked in minutes. And what that would mean is that all of our financial transactions that happen across the web would be rendered vulnerable instantly. I'm going to close on the last one if we go across to cybersecurity, because I think it's a very fitting way to close. As I'd mentioned, cyber runs all the way through every single one of the trends and exponentials. Where we sit today, cybersecurity is a two-dimensional activity. Someone sits behind a computer and taps into the world's information systems. With all of these exponentials that we've shared with you today, the artificial intelligence, robotics, etc., there is the ability to add a third dimension to cyber, and that's the dimension of place. So taking that example of the Internet of Things, and if we were to network every single item that could be networked, our internet would go from the size of a golf ball to the size of the sun, creating an exponential opportunity for cyber attacks. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that any single environment is going to be hacker-proof, but it is imperative that all CIOs engage in a very strong cybersecurity program. And in closing, as we look back over the trends, I don't think that it's a mistake at all that the trends have been bookended, starting first with the CIO and ending with the IT worker of the future. It's quite simply the changing role of technology, the changing role of IT is going to be how we can capitalize on the emerging trends. I hope that this very quick walk through the tech trends has inspired you to think about what you could be doing to chart the next step in your company's journey. Thank you very much.